Hey guys, welcome back. I'm doing the first video in the series I was making called Maximize Your DPS. We're going to talk about Holy Priest today. Unfortunately, Holy Priest is kind of one of those specs that's really underappreciated because it has a pretty low damage profile, therefore it's kind of not desired in high keys. But we're going to talk about what we can do to pump out more damage today. Because the spec is kind of fun. It's also really good in Grievous, like whereas some weeks are like harder for disc, so a lot of people choose to play Holy. But like those people, including myself, feel like Holy really suffers from doing the kind of damage that Disc can do because Disc is also mainly Kyrian, and some people who play Holy play Necro. Like for instance, the video that's playing here in the background, you'll notice that I'm playing Necro, and the reason I'm playing Necro is because nobody in my group is Necro. So like in this key, you'll notice that I'm like trying to use my Unholy Nova to maximize my DPS, but when you are playing these other Covenants, you kind of lack the damage that Kyrian can do. And like Priest, obviously, kind of you can only really play Venthyr, or sorry, Disc, I should say. You can only really play Venthyr. So you're not really the one to switch, but Holy can play any of them. So you're kind of the default person to pick to switch Covenants. So we're gonna talk about ways to maximize your damage as Kyrian, but we're also gonna talk about ways to maximize your damage if you are indeed one of those people who's playing something else because you like it, or if you're playing something else just because you really need that Covenant buff in a key and you're the one to switch. So Kyrian's boon ability like honestly gives you quite a large chunk of damage every 3 minutes. This can be reduced by running the boon Lego. Now most people don't choose to run the boon Lego, they tend to run like Flash Concentration because that is basically the best overall Holy Priest Lego. It does great healing, it has great utility. Holding the stacks is kind of annoying. I'm one of those people who tends to drop my stacks because I just kind of forget about it. But in keys that are kind of like 21, like between 15s to 21s, if I'm playing Kyrian, a lot of the time I end up just playing the boon Lego. Now this is a big like HPS loss. Your group loses quite a lot of survivability, but I do it purely because those keys I don't need to be doing massive healing. I'm very comfortable. My team most of the time is very good, so like I don't need that extra HPS like gain, so I can sacrifice and I can play the boon Lego and I can have fun and like do big damage. But again, it's not ideal in higher keys. Flash Concentration just provides you with so much more healing, your group survivability. It's quite good at like saving people because when you have like 5 stacks, your heal is like absolutely massive. So if you are comfortable with certain keys, like anything that you do a lot, like maybe you are really comfortable with mists, so like let's say you're doing like a 20 mists, you know the kind of damage profiles that people are going to be taking, you're not super worried, you've got a really good group, maybe you could run Kyrian and play the boon Lego, have a good time, do big damage, because honestly the boon Lego will buff your overall. The most damage I've ever done is like 5 to 6k overall with boon Lego, Mechanicos, running the Ooze Trinket. I really tried to do as much damage as possible, and basically the only way to achieve those kind of numbers is basically running boon Lego. But I also want to say that you don't have to do that, because I know a lot of people are like, oh, I hate running that Lego, I'd never do it because like you lose so much. Yeah, you do lose quite a lot. So I'm only saying if you want to have fun and like perform and do big damage, maybe try it out in a key that you're more comfortable with, a key where you know the people you're playing with. Maybe don't whip it out in a pug and like, you know, want to do massive damage, because pugs take a lot of damage. And as I said in my first video, you need to be kind of careful with the people that you're playing with, because like if you're trying to maximize your damage, like you're kind of sacrificing your healing as Holy, because like the rotation doesn't flow. Like Disc, you can do big damage and heal people. Like Druid, you can put your hots out and do big damage, but like Holy Priest, you're basically just sitting there casting damage spells instead of healing spells, or you're running a Lego that's like purely damage based. It does give you a healing boost, like obviously Boon does do healing, but like Flash Concentration is just so much better. So like you just gotta be a little bit careful, to be honest. So if you aren't wanting to play Kyrian, like let's just talk about if you aren't wanting to play Kyrian, Necrolord's Unholy Nova can also provide an okay boost to your damage overall. Again, it's not Kyrian, but it does do damage, so it is another good alternative. It's probably my favorite pick. I love playing Necrolord Holy Priest. I have great survivability. The Unholy Nova doesn't feel awkward to me. Kyrian Boon is kind of clunky, like you have to be in melee, like spamming like your AoE and your single target, and like you can't. It's really hard to heal during boon, and to me it feels really clunky. So I prefer the Necrolord playstyle. So like when I play Necro, if I'm like running, I'm like trying to do massive damage and I'm running the Ooze Trinket, I'm kind of doing 3.5 overall, like 3 to 3.5, if that. Sometimes it's lower. It depends on how much damage the group is taking, like depends on the key level. It depends if it's fortified or tyrannical. If the mobs are lasting longer, you have more time to do damage. But like, yeah, you kind of lose 2k-ish overall between running Kyrian and Necro. Obviously, some people will probably do more damage than me in key, some people will do less. I'm just talking about the kind of numbers that I can do when it comes to a key. So, I also really like Necrolord. I know there are quite a few priests who also choose to play Necrolord, so like that's also another great option. There are people who play Venthyr and Night Fae. Now, Venthyr and Night Fae, I don't think are great choices if you want to do damage. Obviously, people play them. A lot of people, like I know a lot of people love playing Night Fae Holy. They love that playstyle. I'm not one of those people, but like they do exist. Like people who, like sometimes I'll be doing a mist and we won't have a Night Fae, so I'll go Night Fae on my Holy Priest, and it happens. But there are so many other ways to try to maximize your damage for people who don't want to play Kyrian or Necro. So like let's talk about those options for people who don't want to have to worry about their Covenant. So we're gonna basically just talk about the damage rotation of Holy Priest. So like when there's 4+ mobs, I basically start by mouse over dotting everything. Here you can see I'm Necrolord, so I've Unholy Novid, Divine Starred, like then I'm dotting, but I'm also healing a lot because there's a lot of dispels in this pack. But yeah, so basically when we pull a pack, I will dot as many things as possible. If I'm Necrolord, I'm going to Unholy Nova, I'm going to Divine Star, I'm going to press Holy Fire on CD, and I'm just going to basically keep my dots up on as many targets as possible. And then once dots are out, Holy Fire is done, either Unholy Nova is down, my Kyrian boon is over, that's when I start pressing Holy Nova. And I just start spamming. It's not a super fun rotation, but trying to weave in some Holy Novas can just give you that little bit of extra AoE, so you can really try to maximize the amount of damage you're doing to multiple targets. Now, if you are Kyrian, let's say, I would boon as soon as possible. I basically dot 1 to 2 to maybe 3 or 4 things, depending, and then I try to get my boon right off the bat, because especially on Tyrannical, mobs don't live very long, and like you're gonna if you have a monk or like a combusting mage or something, or a hunter in the SCDs, warlocks even, those mobs will die fast. So if you're Kyrian, you want to be booning off the bat to make sure that you can get the whole boon and the explosion at the end. Because if you are dotting, like holy firing, kind of like dawdling around like with other things, and then you Kyrian boon, sometimes you'll notice that like the mobs will die before your explosion goes off. I've had this happen to me far too many times. So try to boon as soon as possible if you're Kyrian. But yeah, if you're a Necro, again, dot mobs, like Unholy Nova off the bat, dot mobs, Holy Fire, I Divine Star. A lot of people use Divine Star as a healing cooldown. That's totally fine. I basically use it as an AoE damage type of thing. So I'll run it through the middle of the mobs, bring it back, does a little bit of extra damage. And then obviously try to weave in some Shadow Word Deaths when you can. Basically just try to use all your CDs as much as you can on packs, just to give you that little bit of boost. Obviously you're not a Holy Paladin, you're not a Resto Shaman, you're not going to be doing 10k off the bat. But hey, the more time you spend casting damage, like damage globals, you'll do more damage. Obviously you're going to be healing sometimes, so it's a little bit harder, but if you can try to make sure you get all your dots out, then it's totally fine. Like then you can kind of heal, you still got your dots sticking, you don't need to, go crazy and like sacrifice healing your team for doing damage, because your dots can kind of carry you during that downtime. So yeah, on single target, basically if I'm Necro, I dot it, then I Unholy Nova, Holy Fire, and then I start the Smite spam. I weave in some like Shadow Word Deaths when possible. That's basically your whole rotation. It's just like kind of maintaining dots, spamming Smite. If you're Kyrian, obviously you're going to be in your boon, so you're going to be single target AoE spells. Like that's just the way it is. I haven't played a lot of Night Fae, so I'm going to be honest, I don't really know how that affects you, but because a lot of the time Night Phase not a great choice for me because I kind of want to do, sorry, as much damage as possible, but your rotation is probably about the same. We all just dot, holy fire, smite, spam, weave into death. There's kind of no change there. Now, if you've done all these things, or you're doing all these things, another way to get a little bit of damage is to stack Verse. Now, obviously, some people prefer having higher haste, some people prefer having higher crit, some people like having mastery for your, like, Echo of Light, like, passive. It's kind of like, basically whatever you want. I prefer Verse. I prefer being tankier, especially if I'm Kyrian and I'm in the middle of, like, mobs and melee, like, pressing my boon, because sometimes you can get sideswiped, or you can accidentally send in a frontal, and being, like, obviously having more Verse makes you a bit tankier, so that kind of helps. But I also like to stack crit Verse, because I think Verse is just a great stat for everything, rather than stacking mastery. So you could always look at, like, moving your stats around. Also, having lower haste. Obviously, you don't want super low haste, because it kind of feels a bit awkward to play, but with the anima power that buffs your haste, I run pretty low haste. I'd say between 10 to 14% haste, and then I get the anima power, so I'm chilling at that point. But I mean, I really enjoy having more Verse. I prefer feeling a bit tankier, because as a cloth wearer in, like, 23s, I feel like anything's gonna one-shot me, basically. So yeah. Also, again, trinkets can make a pretty big difference. I wouldn't say pretty big, but they can make some kind of a difference. Like, I sometimes run the Ooze trinket, or the trinket from the male boss in Tazavesh. They can give me a little bit of a boost, but it's most of the time between 3 to 7% of my overall. So, but if you're Kyrian with the PF trinket, with Mechanicos dot, making sure that when you press your boon, you're in melee so that you can get the dot on as many ads as possible, because if you're at range, you won't get the dot. That can really help. But then again, the PF trinket and, like, the male trinket are not, I wouldn't say they're kind of something you'd always want to run. They're just something if you're just trying to get a little bit of extra damage, because obviously stat stick trinkets are still good for healing. They're still good for damage, so, like, you don't need to feel like you have to run a trinket that has some kind of damage attached to it. Those trinkets are still really good. But again, they can make a little difference, so hey, give it a try, see if it works for you, and then obviously let me know how you feel. But yeah, for me, they're only 3 to 5% of my overall, so it's kind of like, it's not a big deal. Like, it's a bigger deal, like, not having shards. I would make sure that you have your damage shards in. Having 3 shards also can be pretty big for your overall, so if you have those plus everything else, you'll kind of be chilling. But I also want to make it clear that you're not going to be doing massive damage. You're not going to be doing Holy Paladin or Resto Shaman damage. But if you are wanting to, try running the boon Lego. Try running it in, like, a key that you're more comfortable with. As you can see in this key that I'm here on stream, I'm playing Flash Concentration. But also, I would probably be running the boon Lego if I was Kyrian, because unfortunately I'm not Kyrian. But give it a go. Let me know. But just be a little bit careful, because you are going to lose quite a lot of healing if you aren't running that Lego. So you kind of have to be prepared to just play a bit smarter, heal a bit smarter. But hey, give it a go. You'll see a big difference in your damage, but you're also going to see a really big difference in your healing. So yeah, that's kind of all I had to say. Unfortunately, Holy Priest is just, it's not Shaman, it's not Paladin. We're always going to suffer, but these are kind of the best tips and tricks I can give you to try to do as much damage. I love how I've been sitting here dead on my screen for so long. It's always feeling good. But I will say I really, really enjoy Holy Priest. And if I find more tips and tricks on how to do more damage, I'm definitely going to make an updated video. But hey, let me know what kind of damage you guys are doing. I'd love to know what your overalls look like, because obviously the spec does anywhere between 1k to probably, I've done like 5.7 was kind of my best. So let me know what you guys are doing. And I hope you'll have a lovely day or night wherever you are, and I will see you guys in the next video. Good night, guys. Or goodbye. I do this all the time. Bye, guys.